Welcome back to Max Marquee Matchup. It's yours truly, DMac Wake. Also here with Ev, Mr. Facts and Stats himself. Happy to have you back on after that week one Max Marquee matchup. Obviously, does not necessarily go your way, but Ravens are back in a primetime spot here versus the Cowboys. Wanted to have you back on once again. Thank you for your time. Happy to have you here, Ev. How you doing today, man?
One, thank you. Two, I'm feeling great. I just got through a nice Friday workout. Ready to talk some Ravens football whenever I can talk about my team outside of being uh, my area of field, which the daily fact and stat show. Appreciate you coming your way. I'm glad to step on a Max Marquee matchup and talk about the Ravens and Cowboys today, man.
Absolutely, sir. So, look, we're going to start out kind of looking at a little bit of a full field view as far as the NFL from a 3,000-foot view. We're 2 weeks in, and you guys by this point have heard the conversation as far as 0-2 teams and their chances of making the playoffs. Obviously, the Ravens do fall into that boat, but I wanted to just look at a few of the 0-2 teams to this point, and I'll preface this by saying I'm not looking at the bad 0-2 teams. Giants, I don't care. Terrible. It's the reality situation. Panthers, we know you're the biggest joke in sports. So honestly, it does not matter that much. But as far as a few of the 2 teams that are left over, we have the Rams in the NFC, Broncos in the AFC. We have also the Ravens and Bengals after 0-2 start, both of them having to lose to my Chiefs, of course, and the Ravens with their fortunate loss last week to the Raiders as well. The Bengals week 1 loss to the Patriots. And then we have 3 AFC South teams that are 0-2. So I will say this to start out. Let's start with the AFC South because I think that's the most fascinating to have 3 0-2 teams between the Titans, Jaguars, and Colts. If I ask you which one of those 3 teams do you think can turn it around and challenge the Texans for the division? And that doesn't mean that you think it'll happen, but simply do you think has the best chance at doing so between those Titans, Jaguars, and Colts? Which do you think will end up, having that chance?
I'm gonna have to go to the team that we've seen playing already so far this year. I was never high on the Titans. Obviously, they made a lot of moves. Credit to their new defensive additions, right? And everything that they've done. And we look at the Jaguars, interesting team, but I'm just not all the way there when it comes to them. I think I'm going Colts because one, we just seen them play them well in week 1. I think there's more upside with that roster. You got Josh Down coming back this Sunday. I know AR and Mitchell is still struggling to come to a good connection. Obviously, his first 2 games of his career. Alec Pierce, he's coming along pretty good through the first 2 games. And MPJ is yet to pop, but you still got to bank on what he has been last year and expectations for him this season. So you pair those 4 guys as pass catchers with Jonathan Taylor on the backside of their up and down defense, but their defense not too good of a secondary. You sort of kind of would I would lean Colts personally. I've seen them play the Texans pretty well, and like you said, I'm not saying they're going to take or even be in contention to win the division completely. But if I had to bank on one of those 0-2 teams to be sort of kind of there in the end, maybe even 10-7, 9-8, somewhere in that ballpark, I'll probably say the Colts.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. To me, it is the Colts. They still have the most upside as far as both sides of the ball. In my opinion, their defense has struggled, significantly to this point, and it may not ever turn around. But their offense is still in a position, in my opinion, if they do get AR kind of on the same accord with Shane Steichen, there's going to be some ups and downs as it comes to his play. It's going to be volatility, but getting Josh Downs back this week could be the start of their turnaround on that side. So I think that that's a team to peg. Titans' defensive line is stout, but outside of that, I think Will Levis is just simply going to sink them. And look, I'd love to believe in the Jaguars, but it seems like they're just going to continue to be one of those franchises that it's just going to not live up to expectations. It's crazy the way that they lost week 1 with Etienne's fumble and the Dolphins having the walk-off field goal. And week 2 wasn't much better for them. So I just got to see it from the Jaguars first. I think the Colts have the most upside for a turnaround there. The second one, before we get to obviously the AFC North teams, Broncos and Rams, 2 teams. Rams devastated by injuries currently. Obviously, Kupp and Puka now out. Lost some offensive linemen, dealing with defensive secondary issues as well. Both teams in tough divisions as far as who the favorites are. The Chiefs are sitting at 2-0. 49ers sitting at 1-1 after suffering some attrition on their end as well in that NFC West, but still Seattle sits at 2-0 in their division. Either one of these teams to you have any chance of getting back into the wild card picture? For me, if the Rams can get their teams back or their players back in time to maybe make a push, it could be possible. But I don't see much of hope for either one of these teams personally. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick, I would say the Rams, but I think neither is realistic. Obviously, Sean and company wanted Bo Nix. Didn't really think that that's a guy that was going to succeed for the Denver Broncos, or even having them. You said the Broncos, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or even having them having a good season. One team that's a surprise in that division is the Chargers. With Jim looking like he's a great leader there, having a most 2-0 start. As of obviously right now, Justin Herbert is battling a high ankle sprain. We'll see how that hinders him if he plays week 3 throughout the rest of the season. But Broncos, no, I'm fully out on. And then Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback. I love the running back that they have, and Kyron Williams had my fantasy team last year. But when you look at the pass catchers now, Tutu, Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, and a good tight end in Kobe, it's not enough to bank on to win games or even turn around for a wild card spot. Now Cooper Kupp, he avoided IR, right? Whenever you can avoid IR, you ought to think, that's good, but it's still no real timetable. So, yeah. I mean, it's like, you don't really know, but meanwhile, Puka Nacua, he's out for some time. So, it's tough, man, because you need one of those guys, if not both, for your offense to flow. I expect Kyron to see a lot of stack boxes now. How often is those chains going to move? Are those guys on the outside going to create a lot of separation and make it easy for Matthew Stafford to feed him the ball? So, my overall, my answer is neither one of them teams. Definitely not the Broncos. If I had to say, I'll say the Rams, but I think the Rams now will be finished the 4th best team in the division this year.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, the Bo Nix, Sean Payton pairing did not inspire a lot of confidence for me before the season. It has not inspired a lot of confidence for me after the season. And I think the Rams' attrition is just going to be too much for them, especially given that they've already lost what was from last year a defense that had Raheem Morris and Aaron Donald anchoring it, and now have no way to replace them, in addition to the losses that they've already suffered injury-wise. So finishing up here with the 2 teams in the AFC North. Now, I'm not going to ask you, which one of these 2 teams do you believe in more? There may be a little bit of bias there. Not saying that you can't take it from a objective standpoint. There might be. So the way I want to look at it is I'm going to allow you to make the case for the Baltimore Ravens from a optimistic standpoint, why the Ravens should still be looked at as possible Super Bowl contenders in the AFC.
Yeah, man. We came into this season as Super Bowl contenders. Obviously, made the AFC Championship game last year, and people lost a lot of coordinators, lost a lot of key guys from a personnel perspective. Credit to Mike over there in Seattle, but don't give up. And the reason why I say that, because we have a lot of leaders in our locker room, and they all been echoing that and preaching that throughout this week leading up to our Sunday matchup against Dallas. Whether that's Lamar Jackson, whether that was Roquan, whether that was Kyle Hamilton, whether that was Marlon Humphreys, right? You hear me list a lot of good players that a lot of people that have on their roster. The offense isn't fully clicking yet, right? I think whenever you add a guy like Derrick Henry, you will have your woes or your ups and downs. We heard John come out after week 1 and say we didn't get this guy to give him 30 carries per game, which is understandable. We have a quarterback in Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is our offense. I think we probably should have prioritized pass catchers, elite pass catchers, or really good pass catchers that'll help make it easier for Lamar Jackson or even offensive line. But we'll get to that. I think the left side of our line is good. We seen Derrick Henry run to that side pretty efficiently against Las Vegas last week Sunday. We have a good, in my opinion, rookie tackle in Roger, where we're swapping between him and Patrick in games. I don't understand. We're swapping 2 tackles during games and keeping Daniel, one of the biggest issues on the line, pretty much in the whole damn game. But a lot of Ravens fans want Ben Cleveland to start. Hopefully that happens. But I think this week, Sunday, going against this Dallas team that we're playing, you'll see things start to turn around. And after that, we got Buffalo and Cincy, which is, you will say, 3 straight tough games. But I wouldn't give up on the Ravens yet. I think that we have a true identity, but it's not all the way there yet from a defensive standpoint. The defense, the secondary isn't living up to the hype. We potentially have Nate Wiggins back this Sunday. He didn't play last week due to a car accident that he was in the week prior. He practiced today. John said he looks good. It's up to the doctors now. So I do assume when Nate comes back, you'll see a lot of Nate Wiggins. I know Zach wanted to ease him on during week 1. Him and Trenton Simpson eased him on during week 1, but week 2, Simpson played 100% of the snaps. And I expect to see Nick see a lot of field time as well. So we'll see less of Jalen Armour Davis and et cetera. So I think this team, from a talent perspective, is still one of the most talented teams in the AFC. And we just got to put it all together offensively and defensively. So I wouldn't give up on the Ravens yet because I think we're going to go into Dallas, and we know Lamar's record against the NFC teams. Playing in the dome, I think he'll put on a show, and people are going to start, there goes the Ravens before that we know over the last couple of years since Lamar been the quarterback. So, yeah, I wouldn't give up on us yet. I think we still have too talented of a team to give up on.
I agree wholeheartedly, especially when you have that guy quarterback. And truthfully speaking, like I'm not writing off either one of these teams as far as being a contender in the AFC, because I think that upside still exists with you guys and certainly for the Bengals as well. And you saw kind of glimpses of it in the way in which they gave us a tough game, as they always tend to do, especially, during the regular season particularly. They do a great job of being able to game plan. And specifically Lou, and when he gets in the playoffs, what he can do from that standpoint. And they have alpha level pass rusher and Trey Henderson to build everything out of. Obviously, he taught our rookie a few lessons last Sunday, to say the least, in week 2. And I expect that they will continue to gain momentum on offense when T gets back healthy. Obviously, dealt with the hamstring early on. Don't know if that's tied to the contract thing. We'll see. Maybe just being on the cautious side, which would be understandable. But I expect by the time the playoffs roll around and really the stretch of the season, this team will be looking like those contenders that we expect them to. And I certainly think you guys are in a real, spot to start turning it around and getting back up and climbing those standings as well. Trying to catch up to the Justin Field-led Steelers that are 2-0 on top of the AFC South, just as everybody drew it up to start out the season, man. But yes, so with that being said, now we can kind of dive into a little bit of a topic of conversation throughout this week, talking about quarterback play, offenses, because of the scoring being down through 2 weeks in the NFL. And I'm just going to kind of say, from my perspective, I think this is a little bit overblown. There was a stretch of 2 weeks last year that had similar dip in scoring. Like, I think the numbers were about the same. So dealing with a small sample size automatically is a red flag for me. B, you're talking about, obviously, injuries being maybe a little bit up. Teams not playing during the preseason, that's always going to play, a significant role, particularly, in my opinion, in offensive timing and execution as well. C, I think that people are kind of putting it on quarterbacks, which is weird to me, saying that there's a generation of quarterbacks that we're missing. Really, you're talking about the Brady, Breeze, Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, et cetera, generation that was before that. But there was a low after those guys that really only produced, like Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford, that people don't talk about. And now I think we have really a young crop of quarterbacks that are much better than that previous generation from that standpoint as well. And obviously Dak and Lamar are part of this. Dak is a guy that operates kind of in the old school manner pocket quarterback that's really smart from pre-snap perspective. Lamar, who I label as an alien because he has the ability to bring you a lot of passing value, but is spectacular as far as the ground game is concerned. I don't think it's a lack of quarterback ability, in my personal opinion. What to me really denotes what you're seeing now, and kind of a little bit of the recent dip in what the passing proliferation was previously, comes down to defenses being more complex than ever. They're not lining up in man over 50% of the time and saying, we're going mano a mano, and either keeping one or two safeties back and showing you that before the play and saying, oh, we're just going to have to maybe send a blitz here from the linebacker spot and hope that we beat your protection. That's not what it's not. It's far more complex. They have far more answers to changing the picture post-snap on quarterbacks and forcing them into mistakes. They have far more answers as far as attacking the protection of offensive linemen. And obviously that is the set thing that'll happen on pretty much every single play, that you can say, hey, there's only going to be 5 or 6 guys, maybe 7 that we have to attack. And we got stunts, we got twists, we got corner blitzes, we got guys coming off, we got safeties rotating late to try and attack that. And those things have had added layers that I don't think that people really like to take into account. And given the defense's credit, in my personal opinion, I think it's in a good place as far as the chess match between offenses and defenses right now, because you see obviously the Shanahan tree of offenses that likes to give its quarterbacks a lot of easy buttons. Then you also see guys like Flores and say, hey, guess what? Those easy buttons I could take away from if I scheme properly. That's exactly what we saw in the Vikings and 49ers game last week in week 2. So I think it's in a good place. I think it's in a fun place where you could see defenses really take advantage of offenses, and some offenses take advantage of defenses even still. And so for me, and obviously the Mel Kiper band cover 2 thing is absolutely insanity. But I think that this is a little bit overblown and certainly misplaced as far as the quarterbacks. I think if you want to pinpoint some offensive lineman issues, that could be certainly a question as far as developing them. But I think you got to give credit to the complexity of defenses. But what is your thoughts as you've heard this discourse kind of over the course of the week leading up to, this week 3s of games?
Yeah, it's funny you just said it. You said what I heard Ari say during the show today. Shout out to Ari and BJ. Like, defense is just getting better, and I think it just needs to stop there. More complex, not so simple. I think previously we've seen a lot of quarterbacks be able to dictate games and basically offensively and defensively, if that makes sense. Knowing where you want to go with every single drive and possession, I'll put it like that. Now you see a lot of different mixed coverages. Credit to the Vikings. The Vikings did that a lot last week in San Fran, where you see Brock Purdy basically was saying, like, listen, what y'all were doing were messing me up. Basically, what y'all were doing were messing me up, and y'all made my job difficult. I think obviously Brock still had about 300-some pass yards in that game or something like that. But from a scheme perspective, when it comes to reading coverages and defensive, I think it's getting a little harder for quarterbacks. It's getting a little tougher. So credit to all the defensive coordinators across the league. Credit to all the talent defensively across the league, and just credit to the coaches too. I think we're at a great spot in the NFL. Obviously, the main thing that's changing, the kickoffs and the penalty calls on roughing the passers and things of that nature. The protection of offensive players, we put it like that. But you see the dip in the scoring and all that, mainly due to, like we just said, the complex, the different schemes. And I think that's very, very key. Honestly, I enjoy watching football games, every single game, because of that. So that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a saying that specifically I heard Nate Tice say, and he's now on Yahoo, used to be on Athletic Football Show, but the holding of the pen by the time the snap ends up happening of writing the story and dictating the defenses, like you said, with quarterbacks. Well, defenses are now holding the pen for lack of a better term, and being able to change the picture post snap and dictate to offenses. And I think that's a huge piece. Yeah, absolutely. So that was a kind of a little snapshot discussion as we go throughout the league and some things that come up. And I'd like to change this opening segment to a little bit of league-wide news, because I think that's a fun discussion and jumping off point. But specifically as it pertains to this game, with two of these quarterbacks of Lamar and Dak Prescott obviously going up against each other, this is an interesting game. Ravens going on the road to Dallas, as you said, in the Dome. Jerry's World, they is currently favored by 1.5 points. The Ravens are on the road. We'll see what ends up happening from this standpoint. I do want to start specifically talking about the Cowboys offense first and foremost versus the Ravens defense. So I want to ask you, starting out, what has been your major concern? Obviously, you referenced earlier, some issues as far as Nate Wiggins, Trent Simpson, and obviously other guys trying to get up to speed. Mike McDonald moving on, so new defense coordinator. What has been your major concern for the defense, having started out, 0-2, maybe not given the performances that you would have liked, particularly versus Gardner Minshew last week specifically? What's been your major concern to start the season on the defensive side of the ball?
It's funny. Every Ravens game I watch, bro, I lie to you not. Every Ravens game I watch in a game, and I'm like, the secondary not giving me enough. Like, I'm not feeling the secondary. I don't know if I'm not feeling. When you're Ravens football or you're a Ravens fan, you're always going to feel your defense, and I'm not feeling the secondary. We had numerous star-studded defensive players come in and out of Baltimore. And I want to greatly appreciate all their time. But as of right now, there's current group, there's current crop. I'm not feeling the defense. Is that because we have a new defensive coordinator? Probably so, right? But I'm gonna say names. Marlo, I'm not feeling you. Eddie Jackson, Marcus Williams, damn near even down to Cal Hamilton. And, Cal Hamilton wasn't that bad against the Raiders, but the impact is not being felt from my guys in the secondary. I feel like through 2 games, we only have 7 sacks, right? Credit. A lot of that is to Oweh against Vegas. I think he had 2.5 or 2 on Gardner Minshew. But other than that, like, we're not getting a lot of pressure. We're not getting a lot of sacks. We're not securing guys. And it all makes sense. I'm more so mad at the secondary than up front, because it's funny, because after I watched the game, I seen this stat on Twitter literally like the next day or earlier this week. We ranked number 1 in rush defense, but number 32 in pass defense. Damn near we're in the back. We're damn near in the back. Our secondary is not playing good ball. I was about to say basketball. Good ball to me. I need Stevens. Stevens had a key pass interference on Devontae Adams in the end zone. Devontae Adams had a touchdown on Marlon Humphreys in the end zone. Brock Bowers torched Marcus Williams. Jacoby Myers had a key catch that helped them move the drive and basically get secure field goal range on Marlon Humphreys. Like, all these things took place this past Sunday. And I think right now the secondary is the biggest weak spot on the far as the Ravens defense. And when you come into the season, a lot of people are high on our secondary, including myself, for obvious reason. When you look at the talent perspective, when you look at the corner out of Clemson and Nate Wiggins that we added with the speed, Trenton Simpson stepping in and filling in for Patrick Queen, who many of us feel like will have a big impact or probably will be better than what PQ was next to Roquan. Matabuke, 10 plus sacks last year. He yet to get a sack, a solo sack on the season. So, it's a lot of guys got to step up. A lot of guys got to make plays. It all starts with Roquan and Kyle, if you ask me. And I think Marlowe and the other guys in the secondary will lead the way and follow suit. So the biggest issue for me right now as I'm watching the Ravens game is the secondary, bro. And obviously we're going to get CeeDee Lamb this weekend. Devontae Adams gave us, and Brock Bowers both just killed us. So, yeah, man, secondary got to pick it up. I'm more so mad at the secondary than anything else on defense right now.
Yeah, and look, that's understandable. And to me, the way that this matchup particularly sets up, I think you're going to see a lot of the same. I don't think that the Cowboys offense is going to run the ball effectively on you guys.
Yeah,
I truthfully don't think so. I don't think, obviously, like the Raiders didn't, and honestly, we didn't have a good night rushing the ball and get you guys either. This is going to be about Dak Prescott and the weapons that he has at his disposal going after that secondary. And I think it's interesting, a little bit of parallel from the standpoint of early on in that game, I think you guys did a good job at limiting Devontae Adams, but like you said, Brock Bowers was getting on a consistent basis. And look, this may be just, hey, Brock Bowers is, a guy that was tabbed as a really great tight end prospect for a reason, and you can't just stick him one-on-one with a safety. And obviously, Jacoby Myers had some really key catches, consistently going throughout that game as a secondary target. But what's interesting from the parallel perspective is this. Later on in that game, specifically in that last drive, Gardner Minshew was peppering Devontae Adams because he felt like that matchup with Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers maybe wasn't as favorable as it had been, but things had opened up for Devontae Adams, and he took over there on that last drive. So it's a little bit of parallel here. I think the Cowboys are set up in a very similar manner from the standpoint of we know who CeeDee Lamb is. We know what he brings to the table. We know he can torch a lot of different secondaries, certainly to say the least. We know Dak Prescott wants to throw him the ball, but can those secondary targets step up for the Cowboys offense? Jake Ferguson is a guy that was limited in practice. It seems like he is going to give it a go today. He's not going to be as good as Brock Bowers, but he is a solid tight end that can take advantage of some things. Brandon Cooks, guy that kind of looks like he maybe turned back the clock a little bit to start this season. Can he give those secondary type of looks the same way Jacoby Myers did? And obviously we know at the end of the day, CeeDee Lamb is the guy that Dak is going to depend on in those difficult matchups. So how much can you guys effectively deal with CeeDee Lamb specifically early in the game and not allow him to kind of boat race you out, just start out with a lead or anything of that nature, and specifically make sure the secondary guys don't beat you guys on that aspect as well. How do you feel about trying to limit CeeDee Lamb just in general, though? Obviously, he's a guy that has a lot of success across the National Football League.
Yeah, I mean, listen, A-Rod said it last night. Teams have been bracketing or playing cover two and or showing two guys on Garrett Wilson and not allowing Garrett Wilson to have much success so far. I think the Ravens are in a very easy spot this weekend. Listen, obviously Zeke for me, in my opinion. Zeke and Rico are not going to have any success on the ground. I think all of our guys up front are going to keep them very contained. They didn't even have success against the Saints. Obviously, they got behind pretty quick in that game. For us, I think we're going to control them. They're not going to be able to run the ball. So then when you come to CeeDee, no matter where you slot it at, whether that's a slot, whether that's outside, he has to have 4 eyes on him for the most part. You spoke on Brandon Cook, obviously the highly respected veteran wide receiver. But outside of that, they're still banking on other guys to step up or pitch in. Jalen Tolbert, I think he had 80, 70 yards last week. That's a guy that can pop, but I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with limiting the running game and then limiting CeeDee Lamb, which is not easy to do. It can be 4 eyes on him. He can still make a play. It's not easy to do. He just got a freaking touchdown on the Saints off of 2 defenders with shaking a tackle. So, it's not easy to do, no matter how many players are on him. But I think we should prioritize limiting CeeDee Lamb as much as possible. You just see a lot of Marcus Williams on the backside, Kyle Hamilton on the backside, or Eddie Jackson on the backside, or Darius Washington on the backside with coverage up front or at the line of scrimmage between Marlo, whether it's Brandon or whether it's Nate, wherever you slide that on the field. So if Nate plays. Double CD, bracket CD, keep CD contained, control the ground up front, and then let Brandon Cook or Jalen Tolbert beat you. Jake Ferguson, obviously, you say he's limited. If he goes, I want Simpson and Kyle Hamilton on him. I think both of those guys will be able to cover him pretty well, especially if he's not 100%. I'm with that knee injury. And that's how I look at it, bro. I think they should bracket CD. I think they should double CD and let one of those other guys beat you because Dak will have to throw the ball off for a lot against his Baltimore secondary, who hasn't been the best so far to start, but I think things can turn around this weekend. We're in prime position to do so.
Yeah, I think that's completely reasonable. And ultimately speaking, you got to make sure that CD doesn't kill you in this game. And so making sure you keep 4 eyes on him on the entirety of the game, that's got to be first and foremost, and hope that you can do enough as far as those secondary targets to limit them. And I think even though Dak is a much better quarterback than Gardner Minshew is, obviously I think that, there's a little bit of step down from Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers to Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cook. So got to see if that secondary step up for you guys. On the other side, as far as the Ravens offense versus the Cowboys defense, I think there's an excellent matchup for you guys. And this is one of the things that I really did want to highlight, especially as it pertains to early season narratives, and why I was a little bit lower on the Cowboys than maybe other people. The idea of swapping out Dan Quinn for Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer has never been great at coordinating season-long, kind of really good defenses. He's never really been a consistent top 10, top 8 type of guy from that standpoint. Dan Quinn has been pretty solid from that aspect, but people have always been like, Dan Quinn doesn't do well versus Kyle Shanahan offenses, which is certainly fair. Definitely a fair criticism as well. But you saw last week, Cowboys end up going up against, what was, a Kyle Shanahan offense, and they got torched. Yeah. Didn't matter. Clint Kubiak took them behind the woodshed with the Saints, Derek Carr, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, Albert Kamara on the ground, and absolutely whooped on them. And that's the concern from my standpoint of you think you sacrificed or upgraded at the defense coordinator position, and your first chance to show that, specifically in this matchup, you failed. And the reason why I'm concerned about it specifically in this matchup is we already know you can't stop the run. Yeah. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are coming to town. Yeah. They're going to pound the rock on you. So if your offense isn't scoring points at a high level on the Ravens defense, this game is going to be well within the reason for them to just grind out the clock and move down the field emphatically. And that's what I think is going to end up happening. And then you only need a few Lamar Jackson passes to create some explosives off of that. And it's a bad day at the office for that Cowboys defense. Yeah. So from my perspective, this is, again, it's kind of a season-long narrative, but specifically in this matchup, I'm really concerned about what this is going to look like for the Cowboys defense because they don't have any answers to stop the run. It looks like Miles Smith is going to be out once again. Their second level hasn't necessarily performed as well as they would have expected, specifically last week. Obviously, versus the Cowboys, it looked better, but the Cowboys have, versus the Browns, it looked better, but the Browns have their own issues. I am really concerned for what your Ravens run game is going to be able to do versus the Cowboys in this matchup. But how do you feel as far as the Ravens and Lamar being, on the road, obviously in a dome, win in place versus the NFC team, which Lamar has performed well in the past?
Yeah, super well. Super well. I just want to say that one more time. Lamar's been pretty damn good against NFC teams, especially playing in domes as well. Man, you said everything that I was going to say. When it comes to what I just seen the Saints do, and Clint and Todd are obviously not the same, or we don't have the same type of player, we'll put it like that. But AK, 20 for 115, and you even had Jamal Williams step in, 8 carries for 39 yards. So we've seen both running backs in that game average at least minimum 5 yards per carry, right? Totally had 190 yards on the ground. So, when it comes to film work, I think the Ravens want to look at what side to run the ball to, where the Saints have success, where up the middle, towards the outside, whatever it is, right? And we have two guys, in my opinion, that can display two different things. If you get Henry in space, he can show you some speed a little bit. I know he's obviously getting up in age, but he's a ground and pound type of guy. One-on-one, he'll run you over. He'll stiff arm you, get you off of him, whatever the case may be. Justice Hill, meanwhile, is more a quicker guy, more elusive. He can catch out the back, but he also is a damn good runner as well, if need be. Not one of the best, but he's pretty efficient, put it like that. So I think both guys have pretty success when it comes to running the ball. And obviously Lamar Jackson, The play action is going to be super duper effective in this game. We've been practicing. We've been a big point emphasis in practice this week. We didn't do too many play action calls against the Raiders. And when you have a guy like Lamar and Derrick Henry, you would figure you would see a lot of play actions or RPOs. So I think we're going to get back to Ravens 4 this week. I think it'll be ground and pound between Lamar, Derrick, and then utilizing Justice Hill. Much success, bro. AK is not Derrick Henry, right? They don't have the same speed. We're probably not. Derrick is not running behind the same offensive line as the Saints. I understand that, but the Cowboys' rush defense is not that good, or not good at all. And we just seen the Saints kill them for 190 on the ground. I would expect the Ravens to have much success on the ground as well. So that's how I'm looking at it. I think Derrick Henry, Lamar, if not Lamar, Justice Hill will be pretty good on the ground tomorrow. Sunday. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and look, I think that the thing that you're looking at is here the same way in which they were able to scheme up Micah Parsons really well. You talked about Brock Purdy going up to Flores after the game. Micah Parsons talked about it after the game versus the Saints of how they really did a good job of scheming against what he could bring to the table and specifically attacking him in the run. So it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens choose to do a similar man side. Obviously, it puts Lamar Jackson probably in harm's way more than you would love to. But there is a certain aspect of where you got to kind of do that in this case to get yourself back on track. And, of course, Lamar's always been pretty good at not taking too big of hits. So I expect a lot of the same in this specific matchup from that standpoint. To me, Ravens are going to have a good offensive day as long as they don't make any dumb mistakes. Avoid fumbles, avoid, senseless turnovers, because this is a team that's still very opportunistic, specifically on the back end. Got to avoid putting the ball in harm's way from that aspect. But I do think that the Ravens will have a good game, specifically on the ground versus this Cowboys soft run defense as well. Matchup being said, talked about from that standpoint, let's go ahead and get on from our best bets from, obviously this game is concerned. I will say really quickly, we did not talk about it necessarily last week. Week 1, though, you hit on both of yours. Rashad Bateman over 27.5 yards, did cash. Henry first half TD also did cash. My pick of Rashee Rice over 60.5 yards also did cash as well. Last week, as far as our Lions and Buccaneers pick, everybody cash. Gibbs went over 90 scrimmage yards. Godwin had 6+ catches. Michael had a longest reception for J-Mo. That hit, and J-Mo also went over his catches. And Spin emphasized how much Aiden Hutchinson was going to have a good day versus the sacks, or versus a backup right tackle for the Buccaneers, and said take over 0.75 sacks. You could take an over 4.5 sacks, because that's how good of a day Aiden Hutchinson ended up having versus the Buccaneers. So this is a very fruitful segment if you guys want to pay attention and entail us as far as that's concerned. But I'll let you go ahead and start out. What's your best bet for this game as far as the Ravens and Cowboys are concerned?
Yeah, I'm always trying to drop more than one, but my first one will be my favorite. I love betting on Ravens game personally because I just know my team very well. Best bet in this game is a no-brainer. No-brainer. You shouldn't second guess this. You should straight bet this completely. If you want to parlay it with something, feel free. Zay Flowers over 54.5. Zay Flowers line being 55 receiving yards after we just seen Rashid Shaheed 4 for 96, Chris Olave 4 catches on 81 yards. Zay Flowers bring the Ravens' primary focus on offense. When it comes to Lamar Jackson as the pass catchers, he's seen 10+ targets in both games. He's coming off a phenomenal game against the Raiders. I think it was 7 or either 7 catches or 9 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. I think he followed that up this past weekend. This weekend coming up, I think he's going to go over 54.5. He might have even went over that 91. I think he probably even had about 60 yards in the first half against the Raiders. So 54.5 is a super duper hammer for me. I think it's minus 115 right now on FanDuel. Another bet that I like is Derrick Henry anytime touchdown. He scored a touchdown in both games to start the season. Week 3 coming up against the Cowboys, I expect us to have much ground success. I think Derrick Henry gets into the box again. I think this is a team that's going to see the red zone or the Cowboys side of the field often a lot or a ton. Throughout this game, I don't see many 3-and-outs for the Ravens. So Derrick Henry anytime touchdown, I think that's in at minus 115 as well. And then one more. Obviously, this is I'm very confident in the first two. My last one, my third, but certainly not the least. Zay Flowers anytime touchdown. That's plus 190. I think Zay Flowers gets into the end zone, and I definitely think Zay Flowers go over his receiving yards at 54.5. So that's my 3 bets for today. Really super duper confident in the first two. Zay Flowers, you can take a flyer on that if you want to put parlay or something.
I certainly like those two. And look, I'm going to go along those similar lines. I think that Derrick Henry is going to have a great day at the office. You can get him for 80+ yards on the alt line at plus money. I'm taking that personally. I think that he's going to run roughshod over the Cowboys. It's one of those games where the Ravens are like, we're going to get back to basics. We're going to ground and pound you. We know you can't stop the run. We need to get back on track. Let's go ahead and start being physical for this offensive line to give them something to go ahead and hit rather than necessarily playing on their heels, trying to get in a drop back game from that standpoint. And I'll take the second one as well. Take a CD Lamb for 90-plus yards. This is something that pretty much always cashes. It cashed last week. I think this is unfortunately a good matchup versus your secondary right now. I think Dak understands how to get the ball even in the worst of matchups to CD Lamb. So I do think he gets loose and gets 90-plus yards. So both of those are my looks as far as this game is concerned. Only thing left right now is to go ahead and pick the game and talk about your X factor. I'll start out here. I think the Ravens do go on the road here and get the win. Again, I think they control the ground and are able to get things rolling as far as that is concerned. I think they do enough on defense to limit what Dak Prescott and them can come to the table with as well from the secondary wide receiver and receiving target standpoint. But key for the Ravens, you talked about kind of the big names stepping up from this aspect. I think that this is one of those games where Kyle Hamilton can leave his mark. The Ravens, obviously, in the way that they've tried to change the picture to this point, is built around how much Kyle Hamilton brings that versatility. If he can make a few impact plays, take the ball away maybe one or two times, that from that standpoint plays right into the hands of where the Ravens want to be on offense and being able to ground and pound from that aspect, putting the Cowboys behind as far as that's concerned and being able to just rush the passer to consistency throughout the game. I think that'll put you guys in a good place as well, make them even more one-dimensional than you expect them to have to be already to begin with. So that's my X factor. It's a headliner to say the least at Kyle Hamilton, but I think this is a game in which he's got to step up on defense and make an impact. What about you?
Yeah, I think the Ravens win this game. I think it's going to be obviously you have two teams that's 0-2 and also two teams that's very hungry. I think for the most part, if either team dropped to 0-3, it'd be pretty tough.
The Cowboys are 1-1.
Oh, 1-1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It feels like they're 0-2.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Cowboys out. Clean that up. But that was bad. But anyways, for me, Ravens 0-2, super duper hungry. I think if we drop to 1-4, I personally press the panic button. I think the division is still in grab when you have a team like Pittsburgh that's leading the way so far. Now, if it was Cincy or maybe sitting at 2-0, I'll be probably a little more concerned with them having the ability to go to 3-0 this weekend playing the Commanders or Monday playing the Commanders. I think for us, I need a Mark Andrews game. And the reason why I'm saying that because I think this is a real game where you can see the RPO or the play action or the linebacker's eyes getting caught in the backfield, wondering what Lamar and Henry are going to do or which one of those guys have the ball, and Henry slips right behind that coverage. I say Mark slips right behind that coverage and have a good game. I think he had 50 yards against the Raiders. I need to go 80-plus this game. He's going to be my X factor offensively. I love the Kyle Hamilton pick as well, but I'm going to play Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews did have a game to get us going. It's been a lot of Zay Flowers. I need this game to be Mark Andrews, and Zay. Obviously, with Henry, ground and pound on that ball as well. So I'm going to go Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I like that. And look, this would be a really good game to see Mark Andrews kind of get together. He hasn't looked great necessarily to start for the first 2 weeks. I think he's fine, and he's also obviously working back from a little bit of injury. Obviously had the little bit of car accident situation before the season as well. There are things that I think he's working back from, but I do think that he still looks like the guy that can get the job done. And again, this is a matchup where you can take advantage of the Cowboys linebackers. You pound the ball. Oh, that sounds crazy. You run the ball effectively. And you set up, obviously, the linebackers to start coming forward. You can get in behind them and get the job done from that aspect. Expect Mark Andrews to go out there and have himself a little bit of a bounce back game. First real good game of the season as well. And I kind of need it in fantasy, so it'd be nice to see.
Yeah, sure. Any Cowboys fans, I'm sorry. Y'all did me a favor week 1. I don't even know how I forgot about week 1. So, I beat the Browns, and I remember that game vividly. Deshaun Watson was in hell. So thank y'all for that. Y'all are not 0-2. We're both going to be 1-2 after the end of this weekend, though. So put it like that.
There you go. Absolutely. So once again, thank you so much for joining me, Ev. Appreciate it. Always good to talk football with you. Once again, everybody, please go check out Facts and Stats, the daily sports show. It's on playback on YouTube, also on Twitter occasionally as well. Please make sure you follow Ev and everything great that we do over there. Great talking to you on a daily basis as well. Make sure you guys tune in to Win the Day TV right here on YouTube. We will be having our normal Sunday preview show, of course, running down all the marquee games. making sure you guys have your best bets in, ready for Sunday. As far as another week 3 full NFL slate is concerned, a lot of good games, a lot of good matchups to look forward to. We'll be doing that on Sunday morning with myself, of course, at DMac Wake 316, Sosa, Spin, and Prop, of course. Looking forward to that. Make sure you follow Sunday Quarterbacks. And again, check back here next week for another Max Marquee matchup. Appreciate you guys for coming by, for Ev and myself. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy. Peace out.